We have been working with different peptides, hydrophilic, hydrophobic. Some of them, most of them were anti-diabetic, anti-obesity peptides. One of them was an anti-pain peptide, which was kind of lipophilic, very low molecular weight, and that was a very nice peptide for us to work with because it was small, it was hydrophobic. So we developed a number of formulations, and Andreas in his lab, they did some PK/PD analysis that clearly showed that this peptide could be delivered systemically following oral administration. So that was a good output regarding PK/PD evaluation. However, most of the prototypes were loaded with different kinds of insulin, GLP-1 analogs, and the idea was to look at the response in terms of decreasing the plasma glucose levels and also in terms of PK analysis. And I would say you have been listening to David that, and to Andreas also, that we had at the end like 13 prototypes that fulfilled the criteria of the target product profile in terms of mucodiffusion, stability, control release, etc. So these prototypes were tested in rats for their PK/PD behavior, and among these 13 prototypes, we found that 6 of them exhibited a glucose response, a response in terms of decreasing the plasma glucose levels. These 6 prototypes were sent to Sanofi, where they were doing, over the last few months, they have been doing the kind of validation of these in vivo data obtained for these specific prototypes. So whether this validation has led to the selection or 1, 2, or more prototypes, we will see during the discussion we will have in the meeting today. So basically, I would say that we ended by knowing that the kind of model we used, like we were using the ex vivo model from David Bryden, or in vivo models with different experimental protocols, we were obtaining different data. So we used oral administration, we used intra-intestinal injection, intraduodenal, intrajejunal injection, and in some cases we had different data. So the way you set up the experiment definitely influences the response. The same way, I have to say that whether you use a normal glycemic animal or hyperglycemic rat, the response may be different. Like for some prototypes, we didn't see a very intense response in normal rats, and we found a much more remarkable response in diabetic rats. If you have a look at the literature, you will see that most of the anti-diabetic peptides, and notably insulin, are tested in diabetic animal models. However, we intentionally wanted to compare this data in diabetic models with normal rats because we know that the induction of diabetes influences the response, but it also increases the variability in the response obtained for the different prototypes. So I would say this is what I remember, like after all this screening with thousands of formulations and finally 13 prototypes selected, 6 of them gave a modest or higher response. So an acceptable response to continue further the evaluation of these prototypes. So I would like to finish by saying that, well, I'm not sure that working with so many anti-diabetic peptides was the best option, because obviously insulin in particular is extremely challenging, and we were discussing that from the beginning of the project. Insulin is going to be too complicated, it's too large, it's too hydrophilic, it's too sensible to degradation. However, we do believe that many of the prototypes we have developed can be very useful for other, probably smaller molecular weight, probably a bit more hydrophobic peptides. This is all I remember. I don't know if you would like to add anything to it.